Wei Wuxian sat blankly like this for a while, and Lan Wangji came back. He had already been dressed into a set of wedding clothes. Wei Wuxian raised his head and looked over, staring blankly at Lan Wangji, who was all dressed up. For a moment, he felt a mixture of emotions, and the hand holding the paper trembled slightly. Wei Ying? Lan Wangji noticed something was wrong with him and frowned slightly. When he came over, he saw the paper on his hand at a glance. He understood everything at once, but I didn't ask any more questions. He just said, "Do you want to reply?" Wei Wuxian shook his head and said, "No need." He folded the piece of paper twice and put it aside together with Jinling's brocade box. He smiled at Lan Wangji and said, "Lan Zhan, dress me." "I can't dress myself well," Lan Wangji said softly. "All right." This was not the first day Lan Wangji had dressed him, but Wei Wuxian felt that Lan Wangji's movements seemed to be particularly gentle today. Wei Wuxian noticed that the patterns embroidered with gold thread on his cuffs seemed different from those on Lan Wangji. Suddenly, Lan Wangji's clothes were embroidered with the Lan family's family pattern, flowing auspicious clouds, while his own, except for those clouds, also had lotus patterns in it. The lotus seemed to grow out of the white clouds and bloom in the sky. An indescribable strong emotion rushed from the bottom of his heart to the back of his head suddenly, like a raging wave. Due to the influence of his recent amnesia, Wei Wuxian couldn't always distinguish things clearly these days. Sometimes he still vaguely felt as if everything happened yesterday. He was still 20 years old, still in his prime, with relatives and friends, lovely juniors who relied on him, and Lan Wangji who cared and protected him everywhere. It was in his best years. He was wearing this wedding dress embroidered with lotus flowers and cloud patterns. He got married with Lan Wangji gloriously. They became Taoist couple in an honorable manner. Elders understood, relatives and friends blessed. He could still use Swebian, and he also had an intact golden core in his body. Wei Wuxian was in a trance for a while, then woke up suddenly. Then he realized that what he had just thought was not all an illusion. Wei Ying. Sensing something strange about him, Lan Wangji stopped what he was doing and asked him. Wei Wuxian slowly raised his head, and the moment his eyesight met Lan Wangji's, he was controlled by the impulse in his body completely. He lunged forward, knocked down Lan Wangji and pressed him hard. He hit the ground with a muffled thud. Wei Wuxian held Lan Wangji's chin with one hand and held his shoulder with the other, and kissed him eagerly. He kissed and nibbled on Lan Wangji's lips, as if an out-of-control little beast was venting its long pent-up emotions. Lan Wangji was pressed down by him, and he didn't care whether the floor would stain their clothes. He just let him kiss quietly. One hand wrapped around his waist, and the other stroked and patted his back. After a while, Wei Wuxian raised his head. His lips were red, and the corners of his eyes were red, but his expression had returned to normal. Lan Wangji wiped the water stains from his lips and asked, "Do you want more?" Wei Wuxian chuckled and said, "It's time to go." After a pause, he added, "Let's continue when we come back." Lan Zhan, Wei Wuxian called to him in a low voice. Lan Wangji raised his head slightly and glanced at him, signaling him not to speak. The MC of the ceremony on the stage was reciting congratulatory words. Lan Qiren and Lan Qiren were sitting aside solemnly. The eyes of all the guests were on them. Lan Wangji didn't know why Wei Wuxian suddenly called him out at this time. Wei Wuxian smiled slyly and said, "I'm about to do a big thing, so stick around, all right?" Lan Wangji didn't ask what the specific matter was, and just nodded. The newlyweds come forward and worship the heaven and earth. Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji looked at each other and saw a lot of smiles in each other's eyes. They walked forward side by side, and in the gaze of the guests and the elders, they worshipped one by one according to the procedure. The MC said again, "Worship to the elders, and worship to each other." Wei Wuxian looked at Lan Wangji, who was dressed in attire in front of him, and the smile on his face deepened. He bent down and knelt down together with Lan Wangji slowly and slowly, kowtowed deeply 3 times, and then stood up again according to the instructions of the MC. Seeing that the two of them were already standing well, the MC on the stage prepared to continue according to the procedure. However, what no one expected was that, as soon as he said, "the bride," Wei Wuxian made a sudden movement. He ignored all the guests, turned around suddenly, and hugged Lan Wangji. Then, he held Lan Wangji's face and kissed him deeply. Everyone was stunned. Lan Qiren stood up from the seat abruptly. The MC had hosted so many wedding ceremonies, and this was the first time he saw such a bold bride who didn't obey the rules. He was stunned for a moment and didn't know whether he should continue. Lan Wangji was warned in advance by Wei Wuxian, so he reacted the moment he was hugged by him. He hugged Wei Wuxian tightly, and when Wei Wuxian kissed him, he raised his sleeves to cover their faces. Even though Wei Wuxian was bold, he still somewhat remembered what the scene it was now. He only kissed Lan Wangji for a little while and then separated his lips from his quickly. However, their hands were still held together. Lan Wangji straightened up his appearance simply, turned to look at Lan Qiren, who was extremely shocked, with an apology but no guilt on his face, and said, "Uncle, Wei Wuxian poked his head out from behind him. He also called out sweetly, "Uncle?" Lan Qiren didn't have time to speak, but Lan Qiren next to him couldn't help but laugh. Lan Qiren looked at the two of them with wide eyes for a moment. The expression on his face changed several times and returned to a helpless calm, finally. He sat down again, held his forehead, waved his hands to them, and said, "That's all. It's up to you." Lan Wangji seemed to have made up his mind after hearing Lan Qiren's words. He saluted to him, Lan Qiren and other guests present solemnly, then picked up Wei Wuxian beside him and carried him out of the auditorium. Behind them, the MC belated voice finally came, breaking the quiet air and saying loudly, "Send them into the bridal chamber." Wei Wuxian was wearing the complicated wedding dress. It was inconvenient for him to roll around on the bed in the silence room. He said, "Lan Zhan, I can't believe it. You are really amazing." While they were away from the silence room for most of the day, someone came over to decorate the room into a wedding room. The word "she," double happiness, was posted on the wall, and red candles with dragons and phoenixes were lit on the table. Wei Wuxian was lying and rolling on a bright red wedding quilt. Lan Wangji came over and sat down next to him and said with a hint of anger in his tone, "I told you to be more obedient earlier." Wei Wuxian kicked off his legs and got up from the bed, rubbed against Lan Wangji's body, and said, "But aren't you very cooperative with me?" Lan Wangji glanced at him and said, "Mess around." Wei Wuxian laughed even more happily. "Someone just like that, I mess around." Lan Wangji looked at him silently for a while, then couldn't help but hold him down, and was about to block his mouth. But Wei Wuxian shouted, "Hey!" and covered his face with his hand, saying, "Wait, wait. Lan Zhan, we still have business to do." He pursed his lips and pointed to a pot of wedding wine on the small table by the windows. This was considered the last step of the wedding ceremony. It was indeed necessary to drink this wine. Lan Wangji loosened his grip on Wei Wuxian's hand gradually. Wei Wuxian climbed up, stretched out his arms to reach the wine cups and pot, poured half a glass of wine for the two of them in person, and handed one of the cups to Lan Wangji. Lan Wangji took it, raised his arm, intertwined with Wei Wuxian's arm, and put the wine cup in front of him. However, he did not lower his head to drink. Looking at Wei Wuxian again, he saw the same. Wei Wuxian only smiled at him, but didn't move. Lan Zhan, Wei Wuxian maintained this posture and said thoughtfully, "I suddenly don't want you to drink this wine." Lan Wangji asked, "Why?" Wei Wuxian said, "If you drink this cup of wine, you will definitely get drunk. Although you are cute when you are drunk, but this night is priceless. I hope you are awake." Lan Wangji looked at him and listened quietly. Sure enough, Wei Wuxian didn't finish his words. He continued, "After drinking this cup of wine, we will become real husband and wife." After 3 worships, they received gifts from relatives and friends, received blessings from elders. Lan Wangji was able to write Wei Wuxian into the Lan family tree legitimately. Lan Wangji said, "Even if I am drunk, I will wake up." Wei Wuxian smiled as if relieved and said, "You're right. Let's have a cheer then?" Lan Wangji nodded and said, "Cheers." The two of them raised their heads together and drank up the shallow layer of wine in the cups in one gulp. Lan Wangji let go of Wei Wuxian's arm and his expression became confused immediately. He lowered his eyes, reached behind his head, took off the band of forehead and placed it in Wei Wuxian's hand solemnly. Wei Wuxian held the band of forehead as if it was the most precious treasure. Lan Wangji seemed to be swaying slightly, and those light-colored eyes seemed to be closing. Wei Wuxian muttered as if he was talking to himself, "Lan Zhan, it was my fault a while ago. How could I forget you?" The corners of Lan Wangji's lips curled up into a smile that looked like sunshine reflected in the snow. When he was half asleep and half awake, he shook his head and said, "Isn't it a blessing in disguise?" The story of blessing in disguise ends, and the new story, Peach Blossom Entanglement, is coming. When news came that Wei Wuxian, the chief disciple of the Yunmengjiang clan, was seeking a bride, Lan Wangji's ink stick broke. From then on, when he wrote, 1 out of 10 characters was wrong. Playing the zither, the strings broke. Brewing tea, he found no tea leaves after finishing. Adding fragrance, the fragrance balls clogged the stove. How Lan Wangji decided to go to Lotus Pier to visit Wei Wuxian? And on Wei Wuxian's own turf, how would he unknowingly tease Lan Wangji? And how would Lan Wangji respond? Let's see what happens next in this tumultuous young love story. If you are eager to enjoy this story, let me know by leaving a comment below.